Bachelor for Life here. I'm going to do something a little different this time. I want to show off kind of a sharpening technique that I use. Something I learned on YouTube, learned from a couple of different books and things that kind of show you how to sharpen convex. I talk about it in some of my videos where I've updated some of my knives this way with kind of a more gradual edge. So I'll show you if you're not familiar with convex and concave. So this is the concave edge where it comes to basically a point more like this. What I'm essentially going to do is convex it so it's going to be more of a curve down to the point. So instead of like this, where you get your normal edge from like a flat stone, it's going to kind of bow out a little bit more and be more of a gradual, almost like a self-sharpening. If you've ever used like a Hilti chisel bit or something like that, they call it self-sharpening, but it's really not. It's just the way the blades, the kind of the shape of the blade, so it stays sharper longer. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start off. This is my board, and I'll tell you a little bit about this. So it's just a plain old cutting board underneath here, and then I've got some it's about a 1/4 inch thick foam padding. So you can kind of tell this thing's pretty used and old, but kind of see it's kind of got a foam padding there. And then on the other side I just have my board and then a strop that I use when I'm all done. As far as sandpaper goes, usually if you got to do some really rough kind of re-edging it, you start with something a little heavier. I've had bigger knives where I've started with something even as low as like a 60 grit or an 80 grit. For this one, this is just a cheap stainless steel made in China. It's a cool little whitetail cutlery knife they got, a little black wood, fake wood handle here, or maybe it's real wood, but it's really cheap hollow wood. So not a real expensive knife, but give it a really nice expensive edge. So essentially what I do is just kind of get yourself set. A lot of times what I'll do, and I've already done this, but I'll kind of demonstrate it, take a marker and just kind of draw your edge on there, because you want to make sure that your angle isn't really high up on the blade. So once you get that drawn on, and then you run it across, you kind of find your angle and you run it across the sandpaper, and I go away from the blade. I've seen a lot of guys go towards the blade, and maybe that works just as well, but I've always gotten in the habit of just going away from the edge, and I'll drag it back, straight back, and then kind of look where it's taken off a good portion of the marker that I just put on. So what I can see from that is that I need to angle my edge just a little bit higher, or if I want to maintain that, you know, that cut, I can just stay at the same angle that I'm at. So I'll do that a couple more times, and I go really slow. This is kind of a sit back, listen to some music, drink a Diet Coke, hang out, kind of a relaxing thing you can do to sharpen your knife, kind of make it your own. So you can kind of see there where all the markers off of it now. And then essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it once I get a good burr going. Another thing you can do, you know, you can put oil on the blade, you can spit on the sandpaper, whatever you want. But once you get a good burr going, like up here, I've already got a burr. Like I said, this is some pretty cheap stainless steel, so this will go pretty quickly. Just kind of feeling it like this. This is the side that so the burr's on the other side right now. And I can kind of feel it up here, not so much here. So what I'll do is I'll do that a couple more times. And I'm not putting a whole lot of pressure, just kind of slowly dragging it, putting like a medium pressure. It's really hard to describe as far as it. You'll kind of feel it as you're going, if you're putting too much or not, if you see that sandpaper kind of roll. Now I've got a spot here where you can kind of see some of the junk, some of the old metal kind of flipping up. Right here is not getting hit very well. Up here is, and here is getting hit pretty good in here, but I'm missing this spot right here. So one of the things you can do, as long as you maintain your same angle, and just kind of make sure you hit that spot, because you're going to want to get it evenly throughout. And one of the things you can do is you can kind of drag like this. The only reason I don't get in the habit of doing that is it does round off this edge. Look at what it's done up here just by doing that a couple of times. It's kind of widened that out up here. And I want to keep an even edge, even clean edge, because I want it to look nice, even though this one's a cheap one. When you're working on like a more expensive knife, like one of your, if you got a cold steel or whatever you're into, a buck knife, you want it to have a nice looking edge when you're done. So I'll run that a couple more times and get that back out of there. From what I understand, there's quite the sharpening community on YouTube, so I'm sure as soon as this makes its rounds, I'll get some nasty messages about how I'm doing it wrong. But I think everybody's got their own technique, and maybe there is something wrong, and if I'm doing something wrong, I'd like to see it. I'd like to hear about it. I've watched hundreds of videos, and like I said, I've read multiple books on doing this, and it seems like there's little differences in everything that in ways that people do this. So let's drag this, maintaining that same angle, and try not to curve, because that'll round your edge. Just kind of drag straight back. Same path over and over and over again, and you'll see that it's kind of starting to form that curve, which in my opinion, if you look close to a blade, I mean, it just looks mean, seeing that nice wide convex curve. There again, let's check the burr and see if we did too many times. Sometimes you only need to do it a couple of times with the stainless. So it's starting to feel, I got a little burr on the back side there. It's pretty rough. Now it's not gonna, now don't get me wrong, I'm doing this on a pretty heavy grit right now for this steel. So what we'll probably do is a couple more passes, maintaining that same angle. And at this point, I'm not really putting much pressure at all. And you can kind of feel when the blade smooths out. It actually is kind of a satisfying feeling once it starts to smooth out. So let's wipe that. And that was the 220. I'm going to switch down to a 600, which may be a little too light, but we're going to give it a shot. Same thing here, just with a lighter sandpaper. Maintain that edge. And what I'm really doing is I'm staying off of this as well, because you don't want to scuff this all up as either. You don't want to. I'm really trying to do this in a way that it kind of looks nice and shiny when it's all done. Even though I've been doing it this way for 10 plus years. I'm still not a professional at it, and I don't claim to be. This is just the technique that I aspire to be great at someday, I guess. Now let's check that bad boy out. So you can see it's starting to kind of shine up and lose some of that roughness on that edge. And the burr is pretty well gone from most of it. I can feel a little bit of a burr. I don't know if I can zoom in on that. You can see that there's just a little bit of a burr in there. You can see how rough that edge is, and that's going to come out. Just takes time. one thing I've found is because I do it dry, I get a lot of junk in my paper, so my paper clogs up pretty quickly. When you get to this point, you really don't want to be putting a ton of pressure, because you're not realigning that edge. You're just kind of shining up the edge that you've created. So I actually switched back to the this 220, because right up here in this spot right here, this curve, the angle isn't all the way there. I don't know if you can kind of see that right at the edge. This one's got a nice smooth convex going. This side has a right at the very edge. It still has its little concave edge, so I need to kind of restructure that again. I don't think I was maintaining my angle. I think I might have been doing a little too much talking. But it's one of the things that once I started shining it up with that 600 grit, you can really see it. And one of the things you really got to be careful. You want to maintain that same angle, because if you start curving, you're just going to round the fucking thing off, and you don't want to do that. And if you go too light, then you end up doing what I did, which was giving it a nice convex all the way to the edge, just the very tip. So you got to maintain that same angle. The best part about it is you could continually do it until you're down to nothing, which will take a while. Let's see if I got it now. It's right in that curved portion. If this was more like a sheep's foot style blade, it'd probably be a little easier. You can still see it's still kind of there, right there, right here. See that pretty good. I don't know if you see that dark spot. Almost gone. Now by doing this, that was the only place I didn't really have a burr on the other side. So I had the rest of the blade pretty well sharp prior to switching back to this. Now what this is going to do is I'm basically causing a new burr all the way across the blade. I'm just kind of redoing my edge here. Still no burr right there. That's this right here, my problem area. Try to stay off of that point, because I really don't like dragging down, because it does some to round off that point, but we got to get that out of there. Looks pretty well going to me now. Got a pretty good burr. Yep. Pretty good burr. Alright, so now that we got the burr, I'm going to go back across it here. Alright. Switch back to the 600. Yeah, it's starting to feel pretty good. At this point, it's still got quite a bit of burr. It's just kind of, I mean, it's sharp, but there's quite a few burrs on it. But it's sharp enough that it'll cut, and with the jagged edge, it makes it almost like a fine tooth serration, almost. If we had a microscope, you could see it. It's like little serrations all the way down. Let's hit this guy a couple more times. And you can set yourself back damn near to the beginning if you roll that blade, so don't get in a hurry. And don't put extra pressure on it, just keep that same pressure you've been using the whole time. And as you're doing it, you'll actually feel it kind of lighten up, and pretty soon it feels really smooth, really satisfying. So satisfying. I'm going to switch over to the 1500, and I'm probably a little too soon on this, but let's give it a shot and see if we can't get it fine tooth out. It feels pretty good. Got a little bit of a burr. It should come out in the 1500 though. If we just keep on that heavier grit paper, it's just going to keep causing a burr back and forth. feel that bad boy. It's basically the same motion, keep the same edge. Same angle, I guess I should say. Alright, well, let's see what we got. It feels good to me. I guess I didn't show how dull this was when I first started. I probably should have done that, I guess. That doesn't make sense. Hey, this guy took a sharp knife and made it sharp. Well, it was dull. It was very, very, very dull out of the box. It's an older Chinese-made knife that I was selling knives when I was younger, and some of the knives you'd buy from China look sweet, but they send them dull. So well, let's see, how can I prove that this thing is sharp? I'm gonna do some hair cutting. I can assure you that this cheap $15 China knife did not come that sharp. You'll just have to take my word for it. So, let me know what you think. Did I do it wrong? Did I do it right? Do you want to see more? Bachelor for life. Out.